The courtroom was silent with tension, the air thick with anticipation. All eyes were on ASAP Rocky, the rap superstar whose entire life and career now hung in the balance. For months, he had fought to clear his name, but now the decision was out of his hands. The judge prepared to deliver the verdict, a ruling that could send him away for more than 20 years. In the front row, Rihanna sat frozen, her hands clenched together as she waited for the words that could change everything. This wasn't just about Rocky. This was about her, their children, their future. She had stood by him through every twist and turn of the trial, but now she could do nothing but watch as their world unraveled. Outside the courthouse, fans and media swarmed, some chanting, "Free Rocky," others waiting for the final blow. This case had divided the industry, with some calling it justice, while others believed Rocky was being targeted unfairly. But the only thing that mattered now was what the judge was about to say. Was this true justice, or was there something far more sinister happening behind the scenes? Let's break down the trial that changed everything. The origins of the tension: A$AP Rocky, Relly, and the mob. Before A$AP Rocky became one of hip-hop's biggest stars, he was just another talented rapper trying to make it in New York City's underground scene. His breakthrough came when he joined the A$AP Mob, a collective of musicians, producers, and creatives founded by A$AP Yams. With his signature style, smooth flow, and undeniable charisma, Rocky quickly became the face of the group, rising to fame with hits like Peso and Fucking Problems. But with success came tension. As Rocky's career skyrocketed, some within the A$AP mob felt left behind. One of those people was A$AP Relly, Terrell Efron, an early member of the group who had once been close to Rocky. Their friendship had started with shared dreams of making it big, but as Rocky's wealth and fame grew, Relly felt pushed to the side. Behind the scenes, sources say there were arguments over money, credit, and loyalty. Relly reportedly believed he was owed compensation for his contributions to A$AP Mob, while Rocky and his team saw things differently. Over time, their relationship soured, and Relly became increasingly bitter and vocal about his frustrations. By 2021, Rocky had fully transitioned from an underground rapper to a global superstar. He had signed major endorsement deals, collaborated with high-end fashion brands, and, perhaps most notably, started dating Rihanna, one of the most powerful women in the music industry. His life was flourishing, but behind the scenes, old conflicts were still brewing. That same year, reports began surfacing that Relly was planning legal action against Rocky, claiming he was owed money and recognition. But things took a darker turn when, according to Relly, Rocky took matters into his own hands. What happened next would become the centerpiece of the trial, a confrontation that allegedly ended in gunfire, betrayal, and the potential downfall of a superstar. The alleged shooting incident: truth or manipulation? On a quiet night in November 2021, what started as a simple confrontation between A$AP Rocky and A$AP Relly turned into a criminal case that could ruin Rocky's life forever. According to Relly, the meeting was supposed to be about settling personal and financial disputes, but it ended in gunfire. Relly claims that Rocky lured him to a secluded location in Hollywood under the pretense of having a conversation. But instead of talking things out, Rocky allegedly pulled out a firearm and fired multiple shots at him. Relly said one of the bullets grazed his hand, leaving him injured and traumatized. Immediately after the incident, Relly did not report the shooting. In fact, no police report was filed that night, and there were no immediate witnesses who stepped forward to confirm the details. It wasn't until months later that Relly came forward, accusing Rocky of attempted assault with a deadly weapon. This delay in reporting raised serious questions. If Rocky had actually shot at Relly, why did he wait so long to come forward? Was this really about justice, or was Relly trying to use the legal system to take down his former friend? Rocky's side of the story: a setup? From the moment the accusation surfaced, A$AP Rocky has denied everything. His legal team argues that there was no shooting and that Relly fabricated the entire incident to gain money and attention. Rocky's lawyers pointed out that there were no official police reports or emergency calls on the night of the alleged shooting. The only evidence came from Relly's own testimony, which could be biased or manipulated. Relly had financial motives, as he had already filed a lawsuit against Rocky before criminal charges were even considered. Furthermore, some insiders believed that Relly saw an opportunity to use Rocky's high-profile status against him. By turning a personal feud into a criminal case, he could position himself as a victim while forcing Rocky into a long and expensive legal battle. One of the biggest weaknesses in the prosecution's case was the lack of physical evidence. Police never recovered the gun allegedly used in the shooting, and forensic experts couldn't find any gunshot residue on Rocky. This meant that the entire case rested on Relly's words. Even more suspicious, the bullet casings were found by Relly himself, not the police. This led many to question the legitimacy of the evidence, with Rocky's legal team arguing that it could have been planted or staged. With no solid proof and conflicting accounts, the case quickly became one of the most controversial trials in hip-hop history. But despite the lack of direct evidence, the prosecution was determined to convict Rocky. The courtroom battle that followed would be filled with shocking testimonies, heated exchanges, and an unpredictable legal showdown. The evidence debate. Does the case hold up? As Rocky's trial unfolded, it became clear that the entire case rested on one major question. Was there enough evidence to convict him? The prosecution was confident that Relly's testimony, alleged bullet casings, and surveillance footage were enough to prove Rocky's guilt. But Rocky's defense team fought back, arguing that the evidence was weak, unreliable, and full of inconsistencies. This legal battle wasn't just about proving what happened that night. It was about determining whether the case against Rocky was built on solid ground or shaky accusations. One of the biggest red flags in the case was the lack of a firearm. Prosecutors claimed that Rocky pulled out a gun and fired at Relly, but no weapon was ever recovered. Police searched Rocky's home, hoping to find the gun used in the shooting, but they came up empty-handed. Rocky's defense team argued that without a weapon, there was no direct proof that he even had a gun that night. Legal experts weighed in, saying, in a case like this, the absence of the weapon makes conviction much harder. Without forensic evidence linking Rocky to the shooting, the prosecution has to rely almost entirely on witness testimony. Another key piece of evidence was the bullet casings found at the crime scene. However, there was one major issue. The casings were not found by the police. Instead, Relly himself discovered them weeks after the alleged shooting and handed them over to investigators. This raised serious doubts about whether the evidence had been tampered with. Rocky's lawyers used this to discredit Relly's claims, arguing, if there was a real shooting, why didn't police find the casings immediately? Could the casings have been planted to strengthen the case against Rocky? Were the casings even from the same weapon allegedly used that night? With so many unanswered questions, the defense cast doubt on whether the casings could even be used as reliable evidence in court. Surveillance footage, the smoking gun, or just another weak link? One of the most talked about pieces of evidence in the case was the surveillance footage that prosecutors claimed captured the moment of the shooting. When the footage was finally played in court, many expected clear-cut proof of Rocky's guilt. But instead, the video left more questions than answers. According to reporters present in the courtroom, the video did not clearly show Rocky firing a weapon. It captured a heated argument between Rocky and Relly, but the alleged gunshot moment was blurry and unclear. Rocky's defense team immediately attacked the credibility of the footage, arguing that the video was too grainy to determine what actually happened. No gun was visible in Rocky's hands. The footage didn't show the exact moment Relly claimed he was shot at. For many watching the trial, this was a turning point. If the best evidence the prosecution had was weak, how could they secure a conviction beyond a reasonable doubt? Relly's testimony, lies or truth? Since the physical evidence was shaky, the prosecution heavily relied on Relly's testimony. He described the events of that night in great detail, claiming that Rocky aimed at him and fired. But under cross-examination, Rocky's lawyers picked apart his story, exposing contradictions in his statements. Why did Relly wait so long to file a police report? Why were there no immediate medical records of his alleged injuries? Why did Relly file a civil lawsuit for money before the criminal case even started? The defense argued that Relly had a financial motive to frame Rocky, pointing out that he was suing for millions in damages. One of Rocky's attorneys even stated in court, "This isn't about justice. This is about revenge and money." Relly saw an opportunity and took it. With no weapon, no solid forensic evidence, and a questionable key witness, Rocky's defense team argued that the case had too many holes to justify a conviction. But despite the uncertainties, the prosecution remained determined to take Rocky down. They pushed for the maximum sentence, arguing that even without a weapon, the testimony and circumstantial evidence were enough to convict. As the trial entered its final stages, one thing was certain: this case was far from simple, and the final verdict would shock the world. The courtroom drama, shocking moments and twists. As Rocky's trial progressed, the courtroom became a battleground, filled with heated arguments, shocking revelations, and unpredictable twists. What had started as a straightforward case quickly turned into a dramatic legal showdown, with both the prosecution and defense fighting to control the narrative. Every day, journalists, fans, and industry insiders packed the courtroom, waiting for the next big moment that could change everything. And they didn't have to wait long, because this trial was filled with explosive confrontations and unexpected developments. Early in the trial, prosecutors offered Rocky a plea deal, which could have significantly reduced his potential prison time. Under the deal, Rocky would have pled guilty to a lesser charge, avoiding the risk of a 20-plus year sentence, received a reduced sentence, possibly as low as 5 years, avoided a lengthy trial, allowing him to focus on his music and family. But Rocky's legal team rejected the deal immediately. His lawyers believed the case was too weak and that they could win outright. They insisted that accepting a plea would mean admitting to a crime he didn't commit, something Rocky refused to do. This decision raised the stakes dramatically. If the jury ruled against him, he could be sentenced to decades behind bars. One of the most shocking moments came when Rocky and ASAP Relly finally faced each other in court. The once close friends, now bitter enemies, exchanged cold stares as Relly took the stand. Relly repeated his claim that Rocky lured him to the scene, pulled a gun, and fired at him. But when Rocky's lawyers began cross-examining him, things took an unexpected turn. They confronted Relly with inconsistencies in his story, forcing him to admit that he didn't seek medical attention immediately after the alleged shooting. He couldn't prove that Rocky had actually fired the weapon. He had financial motives, given that he was suing Rocky for millions. At one point, Rocky visibly shook his head in frustration, whispering to his lawyer as Relly's credibility started to crumble. The courtroom was dead silent, with even the judge appearing to take a long pause as Relly struggled to answer certain questions. Jury selection controversy. Was Rocky given a fair trial? Another unexpected twist came when Rocky's legal team raised concerns about the jury selection process. They argued that certain jurors had expressed bias against celebrities. The prosecution used strategies to exclude jurors who might be sympathetic to Rocky. The lack of diversity on the jury could impact the fairness of the trial. Some legal analysts even suggested that Rocky was being made an example of, pointing out that similar cases involving white celebrities had resulted in lighter sentences or dismissals. This led to a heated exchange between Rocky's lawyers and the prosecution, with the defense arguing that the case had turned into a public spectacle rather than a fair trial. Rihanna's emotional reaction, a turning point. Throughout the trial, Rihanna remained composed, showing up to court day after day to support Rocky. But one moment broke the internet, when prosecutors discussed the possible 20-plus year sentence Rocky was facing. As the severity of the punishment was laid out in court, Rihanna was seen wiping away tears, her face showing a rare moment of vulnerability. This moment instantly went viral, with fans expressing sympathy and anger. Many argued that Rihanna had already been through enough, while others debated whether standing by Rocky was the right choice. Her presence in the courtroom wasn't just about personal support. It was also a reminder that this case had real-life consequences beyond just Rocky himself. Just when it seemed like the prosecution had the upper hand, an unexpected witness took the stand, offering testimony that could shift the entire case. A former associate of ASAP Relly claimed that Relly had privately admitted to exaggerating parts of his story. According to this witness, Relly had said, "I just want him to pay for what he did. Whether or not it really happened, like that doesn't matter." This bombshell testimony sent shockwaves through the courtroom. Rocky's lawyers immediately jumped on the opportunity, arguing that this was clear proof that the case was built on lies. As the trial neared its final day, both sides delivered their closing arguments. The prosecution urged the jury to convict Rocky, arguing that while there were some gaps in the evidence, the overall picture was clear. Rocky had fired a gun at Relly, and he should be held accountable. The defense, however, painted a different picture, one of jealousy, revenge, and a fabricated story designed to destroy Rocky's career. As the jury left to deliberate, the world held its breath. Would they side with Rocky's claims of a setup, or would they rule that he was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? The final verdict was coming, and no one was ready for what happened next. The high-stakes verdict, tension at an all-time high. After weeks of heated arguments, shocking testimonies, and intense courtroom battles, the moment everyone had been waiting for had arrived. The jury was ready to deliver the verdict. Inside the packed courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with anxiety. A.A.P. Rocky sat at the defense table, his expression unreadable, but his hands clenched tightly together. This was the moment that would decide his fate, his career, and his entire future. At the front row, Rihanna sat silently, her eyes locked on the judge. She had supported Rocky through every step of the trial, but now it was out of her hands. Her face, usually confident and composed, showed a rare glimpse of fear. The judge took his seat, adjusted his glasses, and in a calm, firm voice said, "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The entire courtroom held its breath as the jury foreman stood up and nodded. "Yes, Your Honor, we have." The judge took a deep breath before reading the verdict. In the case of the People versus Rakeem Mayers, also known as A.A.P. Rocky, on the charge of assault with a deadly weapon, the room felt like it had frozen in time. Every camera was pointed at Rocky. Fans outside the courthouse anxiously waited for the words that could change everything. "We, the jury, find the defendant guilty." Gasps erupted in the courtroom. The shock was immediate. Reporters rushed to type out headlines while murmurs of disbelief filled the air. Rocky's jaw tightened, his body stiffening as the weight of the word guilty sank in. His legal team remained still, their expressions tense but unsurprised. They had prepared for this possibility, but hearing it out loud was something else entirely. The judge continued. The court sentences Rakeem Mayers to 20 years in state prison. At that moment, the entire energy in the room shifted. As the judge finished speaking, Rihanna broke down in tears. She covered her face with her hands, shaking her head in disbelief. This was supposed to be the man she would spend her life with, the father of her children. Now he was being taken away for 2 decades. She wasn't the only one emotional. Some fans who had packed the courtroom were seen wiping away tears, while others looked completely stunned. Outside, the reaction was even more intense. Crowds that had gathered erupted into protests and chaos, with some chanting, "Free Rocky!" while others debated whether justice had been served. A.A.P. Rocky sat frozen for a moment, staring ahead as if trying to process what had just happened. Then he turned to his lawyer and whispered something, but the cameras couldn't catch it. His expression remained calm, but the tension in his body said everything. This was the worst possible outcome. Moments later, court officers approached him. The judge nodded. It was time. As Rocky stood up, he turned slightly to look at Rihanna one last time. Their eyes met for just a second. She mouthed something to him, but no one could hear what it was. And then, before anyone could process what was happening, A.A.P. Rocky was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs. His future was now behind bars. The reaction from the hip-hop world within minutes, news of the verdict spread like wildfire. Social media was flooded with reactions from fans, fellow artists, and industry insiders. Some called the ruling unfair, arguing that the case against Rocky was built on weak evidence. Others said justice had been served, claiming that Rocky's history of legal troubles had finally caught up with him. Fellow rappers reacted almost immediately. Drake posted a cryptic message on Instagram. "They really did him like that. Crazy times." Travis Scott tweeted, "Prayers up for Rocky. This ain't right." Some artists stayed silent, possibly avoiding controversy. The ruling also sparked debates in the fashion industry, with brands like Dior and Puma reportedly reconsidering their collaborations with Rocky. As the media analyzed the case, legal experts began questioning whether Rocky had truly received a fair trial. Some pointed to the lack of direct evidence, the missing weapon, and the jury selection controversy as reasons why the case should be appealed. Others, however, argued that fame does not make someone untouchable, and that Rocky had to face the consequences of his actions. But one thing was clear: this case was far from over. As Rocky was transported to begin his sentence, his legal team immediately began preparing an appeal. They were determined to fight back, and they believed there was still a chance to overturn the verdict. Social media and industry fallout, reactions from the world. The moment the verdict was announced, the world erupted into chaos. Social media exploded with reactions, celebrities weighed in on the ruling, and fans flooded the internet with anger, shock, and heartbreak. ASAP Rocky's 20-year prison sentence wasn't just another celebrity trial. It had become a global debate on justice, race, and power in the music industry. Some called it a fair punishment, while others saw it as an unfair, targeted attack on a black celebrity. Within minutes, the hashtags #FreeASAPRocky, #Justice for Rocky, and #They Set Him Up began trending worldwide. Fans, critics, and celebrities rushed to voice their opinions, sparking some of the most heated debates in recent history. One fan tweeted, "20 years for a case with no solid evidence? This is beyond unfair. They just wanted to take him down." Free ASAP Rocky. Another user disagreed. Actions have consequences. Just because he's famous doesn't mean he's above the law. Justice was served. Over on Instagram, Rocky's celebrity friends posted emotional responses to the ruling. Drake shared an old picture of himself and Rocky, captioning it, "This ain't over. We riding for you, bro." Meek Mill commented, "They love to take us down when we get to the top. Stay strong, fam." Kim Kardashian posted a cryptic story simply writing, "The system is broken." However, not everyone in the industry was on Rocky's side. Some remained silent, while others subtly distanced themselves, possibly to protect their own brands. The hip-hop community had mixed reactions. While some rappers and industry figures stood by Rocky, others either remained quiet or suggested that he had brought this upon himself. Supporters: Travis Scott, Lil Uzi Vert, and Pusha T openly criticized the verdict, calling it one of the worst injustices in hip-hop. 50 Cent tweeted sarcastically, "They really think 20 years is fair? Man, get out of here with that." Snoop Dogg posted a simple yet powerful message: "Free the homie, period. Those who stayed quiet." Jay-Z and Kanye West, despite their past collaborations with Rocky, remained silent, likely to avoid controversy. Nicki Minaj and Cardi B, two of the biggest voices in music, also chose not to comment publicly, leading to speculation about their stance. While Rocky was the one facing prison time, Rihanna was also feeling the pressure. She had publicly supported him throughout the trial, but now that the verdict was final, people wondered what this meant for her billion-dollar empire. Would brands and investors see her continued support for Rocky as a risk to her business image? Some industry analysts predicted that luxury brands might reconsider working with her, fearing negative publicity. Her Fenty Beauty and Savage X Fenty brands could face backlash from consumers who believed Rocky was guilty. Investors might pressure her to distance herself from Rocky to protect her business interests. However, Rihanna's fan base is one of the most loyal in the world. Many of her supporters stood by her, arguing that her personal life should not affect her business empire. One fan posted, "Y'all want Rihanna to leave the father of her kids just to protect her brand? That's crazy. She built Fenty from the ground up. She's untouchable." Regardless of public opinion, one thing was certain. Rihanna was now facing one of the toughest decisions of her life. Even though the verdict was devastating, Rocky's legal team did not back down. Within hours, his lawyers announced that they were preparing to appeal the conviction. Their argument? The case was built on weak evidence. The jury selection process was biased. The prosecution relied too heavily on Relly's testimony, which was full of contradictions. Legal experts predicted that an appeal could take years, and there was no guarantee it would succeed. But for Rocky, it was his only shot at freedom. Meanwhile, the world watched and waited, wondering, would Rihanna continue to stand by him? or would she eventually move on? Would Rocky's music and brand partnership survive, or would this be the end of his career? Would the appeal change everything, or was this truly the downfall of ASAP Rocky? The fight wasn't over yet, but one thing was certain. Hip-hop would never be the same after this case. What's next? Appeals, prison, and Rihanna's decision. With A$AP Rocky now sentenced to 20 years in prison, the next battle has already begun. His legal team is fighting for an appeal. Rihanna is facing the most difficult decision of her life, and the world is watching to see what happens next. This case might be far from over, but for now, Rocky is behind bars and everything he once had, his career, his freedom, and his family, is now at risk. Within hours of the verdict, Rocky's lawyers filed an official appeal, arguing that the case had been flawed from the start. Their strategy is focused on three major points. 1. Weak evidence. The lack of a recovered firearm and unclear surveillance footage raised doubts about whether Rocky was truly guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. 2. Jury bias. The defense claims that the jury selection process was unfair, as some jurors may have been influenced by media coverage and racial bias. 3. Relly's testimony. Since Relly's accusations were the main basis of the case, Rocky's team is working to discredit him further, arguing that he had a financial motive to lie. Legal experts say that appeals in criminal cases are difficult. Rocky's team will have to prove that errors were made during the trial. If successful, he could get a reduced sentence, a new trial, or even be released altogether. However, this process could take years. Until then, Rocky will remain in prison, facing a long and uncertain future. For a man who built his life on luxury, music, and high fashion, life in prison will be a harsh adjustment. He will be placed in a high-security facility where he will have limited contact with the outside world. He will only be allowed visitors occasionally, meaning his time with Rihanna and their children will be severely restricted. He will have to follow strict prison rules, a far cry from his glamorous celebrity lifestyle. Despite this, some fans believe that Rocky will survive this. Other artists, like Tupac and Gucci Mane, have served time and come back stronger. Could Rocky do the same? Or will 2 decades behind bars mark the end of his career forever? One of the biggest questions now is, will Rihanna wait for Rocky, or will she eventually move on? So far, she has remained loyal, standing by him throughout the trial. But now that the verdict is final, everything has changed. There are 3 possible outcomes for their relationship. She stays committed. Rihanna could continue supporting Rocky, raising their kids while fighting for his appeal. She steps back but stays connected. She might focus on her career and children while keeping a quiet, supportive relationship with Rocky. She moves on completely. If the sentence stands for the full 20 years, she may decide that waiting isn't realistic, choosing to start a new chapter of her life. Many fans believe Rihanna's love for Rocky is strong, but others think she shouldn't put her life on hold. One fan tweeted, "Rihanna has a whole empire to run. She can't waste 20 years waiting for a man. She deserves happiness." Another argued, "She stood by him through it all. If anyone can make a long-distance relationship work, it's Rihanna." Whatever Rihanna chooses, it will shape her future and the lives of their children forever. If Rocky's appeal fails and he serves his full sentence, will he have a career to return to when he gets out? The answer depends on how the industry reacts. Some artists, like Meek Mill and Kodak Black, have bounced back after prison, while others have faded into obscurity. Challenges Rocky will face if he ever returns. Public perception. Will fans still support him after 20 years? Industry connections. Will record labels, brands, and partners still work with him? Rebuilding his reputation? Can he regain his place as a fashion icon and rap star? Right now, his future is completely uncertain. But one thing is clear. This trial has changed everything. The final question, is this the end or a new beginning? As Rocky sits behind bars, his team fights for an appeal, and Rihanna grapples with her next move. The world waits for the next chapter in this tragic, high-stakes story. Will justice be served, or was Rocky set up from the start? Only time will tell. A$AP Rocky's trial has been one of the most shocking and controversial moments in hip-hop history. What started as a personal dispute between two former friends turned into a legal battle that ended with a 20-year prison sentence. Now Rocky is behind bars, his future uncertain, and his career hanging by a thread. Rihanna, the woman who has stood by him through it all, now faces one of the hardest decisions of her life: to wait or to move on. The world is watching closely, waiting to see what happens next. Will Rocky's appeal be successful, or is this truly the end of his career? Will Rihanna continue standing by him, or will she decide to move forward? Is this justice, or was Rocky unfairly targeted by the legal system? No matter what happens, this case has left a lasting impact on music, culture, and public opinion. What do you think? We want to hear from you. Do you think Rocky's sentence was fair, or was he treated too harshly? Should Rihanna stay by his side, or is it time for her to move on? Can Rocky ever make a comeback after this, or is his career over for good? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget, like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any updates on this case and other breaking celebrity stories. We'll be following this situation closely, so stay tuned for more. Until next time.